We're going further to the next speaker. This is Dr. Ksenya Maretina. She is research fellow at the Peter the Great Museum of Anthropology and Ethnography, Kunstkamera in St. Petersburg, which is quite a famous museum, one of the most famous museums in St. Petersburg. And actually, yesterday I heard from our young participants who are going to speak at the second part of our conference that they have used your materials to get inspiration in the topic, and they recognized you here and we're happy to see you here. So Ksenia is going to speak about Mahabharata and contemporary Indian cinema, adaptation and actualization of tradition on the wide screen. And this is one of very few topics related to Mahabharata during this conference. So you are very welcome to enlighten us.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Maxim. And yes, I'm very happy to be here and to be able to present to you my presentation. And actually, as far as I know, this is the only, at least the first presentation at the conference that is exclusively about Mahabharata. And this topic is very close to me because it is Mahabharata that my research is about mostly, and my PhD thesis was also about Mahabharata in contemporary Indian culture. And of course, after my presentation, I will be very happy to hear your remarks, answer your questions. So as we all know, the ancient Indian epic Mahabharata occupies a very important place in India's cultural heritage. It is a work of a colossal volume, and of course, it is always difficult to imagine how it can be adapted. And there are many ways to adapt such a colossal and ancient epic. For example, it was some episodes of Mahabharata were adapted in cinema, in other forms of art, and some episodes of Mahabharata, they are especially popular with authors, with directors, with screenwriters. Then, of course, all Indian cinema, it's actually very much influenced by the Indian epics because the archetypes of the heroes that we see on screen and the types of the motifs, they come from Indian drama, they come from Indian epic because the drama is, of course, very much influenced by the epic. So it's all Indian cinema is very much connected to the Mahabharata, to the Ramayana. The plot of the Mahabharata, it was repeatedly reinterpreted, adapted by many generations of Indian authors, and now it also continues with cinema from the beginning of the 20th century. And okay, let me try. Yeah. Yes, it was adapted before, and now we come to a very recent time, to the 20th century, and in 1913, it was the first Indian feature film. It was called Raja Harishchandra. And of course, it was based on a tale from Mahabharata. So it wasn't the entire epic that was adapted, but it was a story from the Mahabharata. It also appears in some other ancient texts, in some Puranas, but it's also there in the ancient Indian epic. And this story, it was a success. It was very popular with wide Indian audiences. It was adapted later many times in different Indian languages. This film was directed by Dada Saheb Phalke, who is considered to be the father of Indian fiction cinema. And after Raja Harishchandra, about noble Indian king, all his other, almost all of his other subsequent films were also adapted from Indian mythology, from epics and Puranas. For example, according to Indian cinema scholar M.K. Raghavendra, the film work of Phalke was aimed at recreating the mythical past as a national idea. So his aim was not to make his movies, his films seems like a reality, but to recreate this mythical epic reality on the screen, to make this epic reality accessible to the wide audiences. And this tradition, it actually also, this was a trend started by Palke, and it continued and continues today in Indian cinema. And Indian filmmakers and screenwriters continued to turn to national myths and tales in search of material for their work. As we speak about contemporary Indian cinema, mythological genre in contemporary India is also very popular and has great potential. So there are some examples of these mythological films that are still produced in India. So it's not only some past, it's only 100 years back, but nowadays they are also made. So these are basically this genre that was at the roots of Indian cinema. These are the films that adapt Indian epics, Indian different mythological stories that are inspired from there. And nowadays they also are, we can see them, some modern films like this premiering at the screen. A notable example among them is Kurukshetra, that premiered in 2019. It is a Kannada language film that was directed by director B. Naganna, and it was based on the poem The Battle of Maces, Gada Yuddha, which is considered the major work of the 10th century poet Ranna. This work that this film is based on is one of the classic works in Kannada, where the poet compares the valor of his patron king to the Bhimasena of the Mahabharata. I hope most of you knows Bhimasena, who this is. Yeah, the mighty hero Pandava from Mahabharata. By this comparison, Ranna adheres to the tradition where poets drew in their work an explicit parallel between their patron and one of the heroes of the Indian epic. So the film, we see its poster to the right, extreme right. It is inspired by this poem and shot in the lavish sets and tradition of the earlier mythological films. And it narrates the event of the Mahabharata from their main antagonist, Duryodhana's point of view, and ends with his death. So it is different in a way from the main plot of the Mahabharata because it follows the life of the antagonist of the epic. And here we should note that the bold revisions of the main plot of the Mahabharata are not characteristic of the modern era. For instance, there is a play, Five Nights, in Sanskrit it's Pancharatra, by the medieval Indian playwright Bhasa, where Duryodhana promises his military commander Drona to turn half of his kingdom to the Pandavas if Drona managed to find Pandavas within 5 days. So actually this takes place in the last 13 years of exile of the Pandavas, when according to the terms of the dice game that they lost, the Pandavas must spend years unrecognized. And this play by medieval playwright is very interesting from the point of view of reinterpretation of the epic plot. The Pandavas in this play are found in time, Duryodhana fulfills his word, and the play ends and the conflict is over. According to the assumption of researchers, Bhasa probably wrote Pancharatram on the occasion of the reconciliation of two ancient kingdoms, and in one of these kingdoms he lived, and in connection with the advent of a long-awaited peace, he allowed himself to radically deviate from the plot of the epic. So why actually I'm giving this example? Yes, to just show that these very imaginative adaptations of the epics, of course, they were present not only in 21st, 20th century, but for many centuries before. Also, there was this type of imaginative adaptation, of course. In Indian films, if we speak about the films that are made not in mythological genres, but in other genres of the Indian cinema, their epic material manifests itself differently from the way it is presented in this kind of films. There, these mythological stories are becoming part of the modern world. Non-mythological genre films are often a platform in which familiar stories are retold or referenced in such a way that everyday life is framed with myth, which is used as a commentary on how the world is and or how it should be. So some examples I will give, and also some differences in how the Mahabharata plot is presented in Hindi cinema and in South Indian cinema. These are some general thoughts. Of course, there are some other specifics, but generally speaking, in Hindi cinema, the tradition is mainly to appeal to pan-Indian identity of the audience. There are several examples. So let me tell you, for example, about such film as Rajniti, a very present film. Here you can see it to the extreme right again. It came out in 2010, Hindi political thriller Politics, or Rajniti in Hindi. It was directed by Prakash Jha, acclaimed Indian director in India. This movie borrows from the Mahabharata main plot and key characters. The source of inspiration was largely Mahabharata, and the outcome of the movie is the same as in the epic. So most of the main character died during the struggle for power, and protagonist, like the epic Pandavas, go into voluntarily exile. But another source of inspiration for this film was The Godfather by American director Francis Ford Coppola. So actually in this film, the two very vast and famous narratives are connected. So one narrative, of course, is very dear to the heart of any Indians, the Mahabharata, and another, this is a cult film, I think known to all the audience, yes, The Godfather by Francis Ford Coppola. And actually in India it is quite famous too, and there were quite many pictures, quite many films also influenced by The Godfather, and this film is also in a way it's adaptation of this film. Especially it is seen in the story of the protagonist Summer, who rises to power like Michael Corleone from The Godfather. So this film illustrates how political struggle and the desire for power lead to the destruction of a family, conveying the atmosphere of large-scale and bloody conflict between two branches of the same family. The theme of the battle on the Kuru field is central to the Mahabharata itself. According to the epic, this battle, which occupies a large part of the narrative, is not just a grandiose fight between cousins. It is a battle in which the gods, incarnated as Kshatriya warriors, must purify the earth from the Danava demons, who have also taken the form of Kshatriyas. Perhaps this is one of the reasons why the Mahabharata is so attractive to Prakash Jha and many other contemporary Indian authors, directors, and previous authors too. Reference to its plot gives the work a special sense of scale, depth, metaphoricity, which makes its messages timeless and appeals directly to the cultural identity of the Indian audience. Then, if we speak about South Indian cinema, there is another tradition, and in these films, directors, they try, the authors, yes, of the film, they try to appeal to local identities. So also, I chose two films, and for example, the first one, I will tell you shortly about, very shortly. Because the thriller, it is called Bhishma Parvam, filmed in 2022, so very fresh movie, in the Malayalam language by director Amal Nirada. It also compositionally corresponds to the Rajniti by Prakash Jha. It combines two spatial and temporal layers, superimposing the Mahabharata storyline on events taking place in contemporary India. And like in the film by Prakash Jha, in Bhishma Parvam, also Mahabharata is connected to the Godfather. So again, we see in an Indian film, we see references, and not only references, but the structures of this of the Mahabharata, and by the inspiration also from the Godfather. Most of the characters in the movie have prototypes among the heroes of the ancient Indian epics. The film is set in Kerala in the 1980s, and in the center of the plot is a bloody conflict tearing from within a rich gangster Muslim Christian family. The main character is the lead of the family, Michael, who combines the traits of the epic patriarch Bhishma and the mafia boss Michael Corleone. The film addresses the issue of the complicated relations between Muslim and Malayalam, Muslims and Christians, while emphasizing the potential for peaceful relations between these communities, despite their contradictions and prejudices. Part of the clan are Muslims and the other are Christians, and so the family conflict here, in this case, is superimposed on the conflict of religion. So, as we can see in this film, in contemporary India, Mahabharata is obviously not associated exclusively with Hinduism, but is actualized in different contexts and in relation to different acute problems faced by Indian society of our days. In another film, I think maybe some of you have seen, and I not only mean Indian audience, this «Рядом ревет революция», RRR, or how it is, Ranam Rudhiram. Yeah. So have anybody seen this movie to the right? Okay, I see some people, me too. Yeah, so it also... of course, this movie is based on Mahabharata, on Ramayana. It actually includes topics, motifs from the two great epics. And its two main heroes, they are inspired not only from the characters of Mahabharata, namely Arjuna and Bhimasena, but also they have real prototypes among Indian revolutionaries. One of them is Komaram Bheem. He was a revolutionary leader from Gond tribe, which is retained this information in the film. But the director also endows his Komaram Bheem with incredible strength, which refers us again to Bheem of the Mahabharata. And the other, Alluri Sitarama Raju, he was an Indian revolutionary who waged an armed campaign against British colonial rule. In the film, Raju's unwavering loyalty to his country, for which he is willing to sacrifice himself and others, recalls the devotion of Rama to the ideals of just rule, for which he makes vast sacrifices in the epic. And how also the director himself explained why he chose these prototypes, because these two revolutionaries they have never met in real life, as of course Arjuna and Bhima. But the movie is based on an important event in Indian recent history, namely the partition of the directors as Rajamouli's home state of Andhra Pradesh, not based, but it also draws from, in 2014 into two states, Telangana and Andhra Pradesh. And the director, Rajamouli, he was saddened by the hostility that arose between these two territories, and because they share much in common language, culture, and through the figures of these two united characters, who originated from the territory of Telangana and the other from the Andhra Pradesh, he wanted to show the possibility of cooperation and friendship between them. So here we can see also some very local contexts, but also connected to the contexts that are very understandable to every Indian. So it's not only Mahabharata, not only Ramayana that is also there, not only some contemporary situation, but it's also the story of fighting against colonialism in the beginning of the 20th century against British rule. So this, of course, appeals to many of the audience, but this local context we can very brightly see here as well. So I think I'm coming to the end of my presentation. So only a couple of words I wanted to tell about this kind of movies that we see so recently, kind of mythological blockbusters. So, for example, Bahubali and Kalki, also they are available, they're translated into Russian. So, for example, on Kinopoisk, they can be seen. So maybe also some of you, not only Indian audience that we have, but also they can be seen in Russian as well. And they are also very interesting from the point of view of the traditional narrative of the epics, because again, like in the Bhishma Parvam in Rajniti, here the Mahabharata and the references to Ramayana as well, they're connected to some other famous cult movies, and here actually a mixture of them. But of course the questions and the themes are also much the same, and I think the main themes that comes in these films inspired especially by the Mahabharata, it is first the problem of the striving for power that is very destructive. So the message of the Mahabharata adaptations mostly is that the thirst for power is very destructive. Also, this adaptation, they show the dire consequences of familial conflicts and stresses the importance of leaving differences aside and uniting against a common threat and injustice. So if Ramayana is about how it should be, Mahabharata is about how it should not be. So if you see, for example, Kalki, that is most influenced and inspired by Mahabharata, so you understand what I'm talking about, but I hope that anyway I managed to pass some of this, of my thoughts about this, and I will be very happy to hear your remarks and your questions on the topic.
Thank you very much, Ksenia. It was really interesting. And before I forgot this thought that you mentioned that Mahabharata, it is about how it should not be, while Ramayana is how it should be. While discussing this conference with one of our young speakers, it took us around 1 hour probably to discuss the question whether Bhagavad Gita, which is a part of Mahabharata, is actually about how it should be still. Those ideas of duty, do they always correspond to our contemporary realities? And that's an interesting thing. I will ask a first question as a moderator, then I will give a word to everyone else. Sorry for that. Do you think that the dharma, as expressed in Mahabharata in general, and in the Gita in particular, fully corresponds to what our contemporary society believes to be the duty and the dharma, and how, if not, or if yes, then we understand that. If not, how is this idea reflected in the contemporary cinema? The difference between the perception of what should be or should not be in the Mahabharata and in the contemporary cinema.
Oh, thank you.
It can be quite difficult. It was just our discussion with our young participants before this event. So this is why I want to know your opinion about that also.
Yeah, thank you. It's a very good question, a very deep one. And I think even for me, it's easier to answer on the basis of literature, maybe. So for example, there is a book by Shashi Tharoor, the great Indian novel. So there he explores very deeply this topic, because I think in literature it's easier to do, I mean, to ponder on this and to see it from different perspectives and just to, I mean, explore it in words. Visually, it's more difficult maybe to do. Yeah, so here also what he thinks, in his book, he argues with Dharma, with God Dharma. His character argues with God Dharma, telling him that Dharma, it's not the same for all times, it's different, it is for different times, for different peoples, it is different. So it's very гибкая такая. So yeah, it's, I mean, dependent on the context.
Flexible idea.
Yeah, thank you, I forgot the word. Yeah, flexible, it depends on the context. So I think this is one idea, and I think it's quite popular. If we see in the movies, I just don't, it's, I think, difficult for me to show the exact example here, but for example, the first Prime Minister of India, Jawaharlal Nehru, he also, in his book Opening India, he also ponders of the meaning of Dharma, and I think also his words are that Dharma, it's different for different times. So it's not because again, why the Mahabharata, why the Ramayana, they're so popular today? Because if there were some rigid structures that were frozen in times, like the ideas that are in them, then they wouldn't so appeal to the modern audiences. But still India changes, so many things changes, but still they are in all films, they are in the literature, in the minds of the peoples. So I think that's why, because it's not rigid, it's very flexible. So that's why it applies so much.
Thank you very much. And I think yesterday you were present at our discussion with colleagues, like, who are you in the Ramayana, who are you in Mahabharata? And I told them that as per that high standard of Ramayana and Mahabharata, we are Vratya. We are neither Pandava nor Kaura, we are Vratya. So that was a joke, but this is, it reflects the idea of differences, of changes of perception. From that perspective, we are, of course, Vratya. Dear colleagues, friends, any questions, please? Yeah, we have a question. Who's responsible for the mic now? Masha? Who?
У меня, знаете, только небольшой короткий вопрос. Уважаемая докладчица, а как вы считаете, вот лично вам, какой персонаж из фильма «Махабхарата» наиболее понравился, что он более приближен был к самому тексту Махабхараты, и как вот вся команда, которая принимала участие в экранизации этого легендарного эпоса, наиболее приближенная была и вам более всего понравился. Может быть, это не один персонаж, может быть, их несколько. Мне просто хотелось бы узнать именно лично ваше мнение.
Да, спасибо большое. Thank you very much for your question.
Maybe I should translate the question for the Indian colleagues, because it's really interesting. The question is, there's a series, Mahabharata. So who of the characters of that film is the closest to the original idea, the original plot of Mahabharata? And there can be not just one person, but several other characters as they appear in the series.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Maxim, for translation. Thank you for a very interesting question. So actually, for me, it's very easy to tell who is my favorite character of the Mahabharata, because it is Karn. He is their anti-hero. He is very, I see I'm not alone here. Yes, so he is a hero with very complicated fate, because, as you know, he was fighting on the side of the Kauravas, of the enemies of the Pandavas, but he was actually the eldest brother of the Pandavas. So it's a complicated story, and he was fighting not because he was adhering to adharma, but because he was he believed that he doesn't have to betray his friendship to Duryodhana, to his friend. So it's, I mean, difficult, very difficult question, but he is a very fascinating hero. And I can also tell that it can be seen that nowadays in India he also fascinates people, because in many films, here I can tell about films finally, yes, so we also see this character drawn in a very positive light. So for example, one moment. in the film Ham Punch, there is no Yudhishthir in this adaptation of the Mahabharata, but because Pandava, there are 5 Pandava brothers, so one of them are only junior to Karn is Yudhishthir, but in this story we see no Yudhishthir, but we see Karn, and he joins with other Pandavas to fight the evil. So in modern reinterpretations of the Mahabharata, we see that Karn, he actually comes to the side of Dharma, to the positive side, to fight for it. And for example, in the latest movie I watched, influenced by the Mahabharata, inspired by the Mahabharata, Kalki, also the main hero, Bhairava, he is also inspired by the Karn, and he actually is Karn reborn there. So we can see that this hero, he is reinterpreted maybe in different way as we see him in Mahabharata, but he is fascinating there, and we can see that in modern adaptations a very special attention is paid to this hero.
Thank you very much, and I think that
one more thought, sure. And I can also explain maybe why this happens, because in modern times, yes, the time we live in, yes, it's difficult to make choices for any one of us, and this character also, he maybe does wrong choices, maybe good choices. It can be judged from different sides, but I think it appeals also to the audiences that he has to do some difficult choices, and he is complicated character like all of us. That's why it also appeals to anyone.
Well, honestly speaking, I also expected Abhimanyu because his theme was kind of very I'm not sure the word popular fits here. It was just loved by the audience, maybe due to his age and character and his suffering. So like this theme, and his music theme was also very popular during that series. Yes. So any other questions? Any other thoughts, ideas? Anything else to say? Well, no, then thank you very much.